Perfect. So I'm going to give you guys a disclaimer up front, which is that tonight is night 6 of my toddler being in her toddler bed, which means she can get out. So this is a new territory for me. Chris is on watch. I told him, try to beat her out of the room. But so far, she's gone all 5 nights prior to this. She's never left her room, and she's gone right to sleep. I don't think she's feeling the greatest, though, so we'll see how tonight goes. So if I have a partner at some point, or if I have to get up really quickly, I will try to do my best to make it quick. But anyways, all right, so I just wanted to have our weekly call tonight on a topic that really has been helping me a lot recently. I just finished the book Expert Secrets. Uh-oh, he's going upstairs right now. I just finished the book Expert Secrets by Russell Brunson. And it is a great book, especially for those of you guys. I know some of us have discussed, affiliate marketing and that sort of thing. It's a great book for just all around business tips, not just network marketing. But I just finished his book, and I also listened to his podcast, and he has a lot of really great tips on how to, quote unquote, sell, right? Like how to really share your story on social media, how to close the sale, and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of, in the book itself, there's a lot of diagrams that he uses and pictures and images. And so I'm not going to use any of those tonight. I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to give you sort of a framework to use for telling your story online. Storytelling and telling your story is not a new topic for us. We've covered this before. So if this is something that you feel like you need extra help in, feel free to look at our recordings, because every time we touch on it in a different way. So, but I did want to make sure, first of all, that we start off with just, I think this is right. Yeah, that we start off with just some announcements. So the first thing, there's lots of things to share here. So the first thing that I want to share is, don't be overwhelmed by the things that I've posted in the team page this weekend. You're probably going to start to see in 2020 that I'm going to be doing a lot of my work on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. So there will be a lot of things that populate in the team page over the weekend. I know that that's usually people's downtime. So don't feel overwhelmed when you see a few things posted each week in there. I will do my best on Sunday night to go over those things and to make sure that everybody knows what those things are. So the first thing I want to make sure you know, and this will also be in our weekly announcements, is that we are going to host a free Super Bowl recipes group. We did it last year. I looked, actually, the group is still alive. So I went, or it's still present. So I went and found it today, and there was 128 people last year in our free Super Bowl group, hoping that we can have 128 or 129 this year. So invite people, post it on your Facebook, post it on your stories, put it on your Instagram, reach out to previous challengers, maybe even put it in your email blast, like a link to join the group. It is a public group. So anybody can join, anybody can add their friends. And then here's the other thing is, I have no structure for this group. I thought it might be best if we just all share our favorite, they could be fixate or just meal plan approved recipes, appetizers, whatever, for the Super Bowl. I think Michelle Lowe and some other people on the team have mentioned some recipes that I've never even tried before. She mentioned something about like a spinach artichoke dip or something that I've never had before. So rather than me just tell you guys what to post or me post my own personal favorite recipes, it's better if we do it together. So share anything that you might be using for your Super Bowl party, or anything from Fixate that you love, post it in that group. I just want to make sure that we're giving people some awesome recipes. Here's the cool thing is that when most of them do come from Fixate, and people start asking or they try some of them, then it's great because you can have a conversation with them about how the recipes were going. If they like them, let them know that that's part of Fixate, it's part of what we do. So I think it's a great way to just sort of fill our pipeline and get people into a free group. Second thing is Team Cup registration. I know I have not yet made a post in the team page about Team Cup. I know that there are people that are still looking for teams. I've been getting messages today asking about that. So what I will do is I will post in the team page after this call, and I will post a roll call for people to share, who's the team captain, who's on your team, so that we can kind of have a roll call for that, because there are people still looking for teams. So hopefully we can group up some people who are still looking. We're going to have a flash sale. Valentine's theme, love yourself, just like we did last year on February 13th. The reason I chose that day is because I thought Friday is Valentine's Day, the 14th, and then it's a long weekend with President's Day weekend. So I figured people might not be ready to purchase, ready to execute that on the weekend. So therefore, thank you. She okay?
Yeah, she wanted you.
Okay. I figured people might not be willing to execute a purchase on that weekend. So I figured the day before Valentine's Day would work better. So February 13th for that. We are also going to start running a 12-week long half marathon training group that will start next week. February 2nd, that will take us all the way up through the Indy Mini, all the way up to the Geist half marathon for those of us who are local to Indy. And then here's the thing that I really wanted to mention to you guys, because you guys saw the calendar, so none of that is new news. But I worked this weekend on creating some new tools for us as a team. So on my whiteboard here in my corner, I've been spending some time each week mapping out things that I feel like we need to improve on as a team, and things that will help our coaches feel more confident inviting people. And so what I came up with, at least to get me started, was the stuff that you've probably already seen that was posted this weekend in the team page. One is a getting started checklist for new coaches, which I'm going to show you here in a second. The second is a business strategy plan. Basically, it's like a guide for you to lead a getting started call so that you can walk people through something that you're looking at while you're talking to them. You know what to talk to them about when they become a coach. And then also, I just posted today, it's not a 30-day, it's a 28-day challenge group guide for your challenge groups. It is not program specific. I really just, I've been leading groups now for, close to 10 years. The last 6 or 8 months, I personally have put a focus on making sure that I'm creating engagement in my challenge groups personally. And so I took some of those things that I've been using in my challenge group and I put them into a master guide for you guys to use. So of course, make it your language, change the wording so that it's appropriate for you. It sounds like you. But use that in your challenge groups. It should make it easier for our new coaches to invite to a challenge group, because they're going to have a guide that they can copy and paste from if they need to, that doesn't sound like corporate, right? That doesn't have like a professional photo of Jericho along with some corporate lingo. So I felt like this was a more personal approach to that. So those are some new tools that were added. They're all in the team page right now. You can download them and save them and share them with your new coaches. Also is one thing that I haven't finished yet, but it is pulled up in my browser for me to finish tonight, is corporate released in the fall some new onboarding videos. One of them is like a Coach Online Office tutorial. They cover Emerald, stuff like that. So there's 4, I think, total videos, and those I'm going to pop into our new coach email automation. So when a new coach signs up, they're going to get this checklist from you. On that checklist is a little, to-do list item or task for them to hop into the new coach automation. When they start getting those emails in the first 2 weeks of being a coach, right, from our team, in there will be now included the corporate videos as well. I feel like it's helpful because some people do need that extra knowledge as far as how to look at their online office, how to understand it, stuff like that. So I thought it had a place in our email sequence. So this is what the getting started checklist looks like if you haven't had a chance to look at it yet. It's basically just everything they need to know to get started as a coach. So it starts off with there's a place for them to write down their coach ID, their username and password so they don't forget it. It tells them when our team calls are, when the national wake up call is, and it has the phone numbers for coach relations and customer service right there at the top. So this is just a 1-page reference that they can just print off from the beginning, have it at their desk or wherever, and they have everything they need to know every time they have an issue. They can call coach relations if they need to. If you're not available, they can search it themselves, but now they have everything they need to know. And then in the second section, you'll see where, what did I just do? You'll see in the second section where I have them setting up a Gmail account for their coaching business, which most likely they did when they signed as a coach, setting up their direct deposit, creating a list of contacts, and then scheduling their getting started call with you within their first 72 hours. Okay, so this is just a quick action. They should be able to do this stuff in the first day of being a coach. And then finally, there's some links for them. So when you download these files to your computer, they will actually be able to click on where it says click here to watch the video or sign up for new coach email. They can click on those things as links. It'll take them to the new coach email automation to make sure they get into that. It'll take them to a video of Emily Fauver talking about this business being a gift and what we have to share as a gift. It's a really great intro video for coaches. And then of course there's a link for them to order the Slight Edge as their first PD book. So this is just like here's what you need to do today. You're excited, you've started as a coach, this is quick and easy, this is what you need to do. And then this sheet, you can give to them prior to your call or during your getting started call, but this is a guide or a map for you to use when you're having that getting started call with your coach. So you're gonna make sure that they got that checklist complete, right? You're gonna help them create that prospect list. You're gonna talk to them about the fact that they did create a prospect list. Maybe they can go through and star people that they're ready to reach out to now. And then they're gonna send those invitations to those people, to their challenge group. Right here on the worksheet, you can see where it says my health and fitness goal is, my goal for coaching is, and I'm going to use the money I make with coaching to blank. So these are just things that help you facilitate that initial conversation with them so that you know what their desires are, and so that you know how you can really push them as a coach. And then finally, we want to outline for them, their milestones in the business, right? So we want to tell them, okay, what are you starting with? Are you starting with a mega pack of Performance Line and Shakeology? What was your investment? Let's see if our first goal can be to pay for that investment, okay? And you can help them reverse engineer that. This is how many people you would need to help, XYZ. Sharing with them about Emerald, and then touching on Success Starter. So this is exactly the template that I use in my getting started calls, and the calls are no more than 15 to 20 minutes. So if you start following this guide and you're talking to somebody for an hour and a half, that's on you. This should be a very quick and to the point, phone call. Julie, I just saw your question. It says, where can I find the link to the email automation for new coaches? Okay, so if you go to the Body Electric team page and just in the search new coach automation, it'll pop up with a post that I had made back in the fall, and you can click on it there, and then also it's in the document. Yeah. So if you download the document, it's linkable. So you'll be able to click on it. Does anybody have any questions about those two tools? This is just to help you get a coach started right. Is that helpful? Okay, perfect. Okay, so what I wanted to touch on as far as our topic tonight, like I said, is just how to share your story on social media. And I want to start off just by saying that your story is not just one story. You most likely have multiple, if not hundreds of stories that you could share on your social media, right? And so there's things that we could share about our health journey. There's things that we could share about our coaching journey. There's things that we could share just about something in our personal life. So there's all kinds of different topics when it comes to your stories, and that's something that we'll talk about. But I want you to know that I think sometimes there's a misconception that people think that they have one story, that it's supposed to just, rattle off your tongue like a best-selling novel, and that's your one story that you stick to. And the reality is that you have multiple stories, right? I could sit here and talk to you about how I was miserable in my corporate job before I started with Beachbody, and I could take a totally different twist. I could talk to you just about my corporate experience, my motivations, whatever with Beachbody, or I could talk about my headaches, right? Sometimes that's the storyline I usually go with, because I want to tell people my health journey too. So sometimes it's a little bit of everything, and that's okay. But this will hopefully help you to really stay structured in your storytelling so that you captivate your audience, right? And that's what we're wanting to do. Russell Brunson, like I said, this is the book I just finished, Expert Secrets. He talks about how every single story that we tell has three foundational elements. There's a character, there's a desire, and there's a conflict. Okay? And when we'll talk about this here in a second, but the emotion doesn't actually come through until we start to share the conflict that the character was up against. Okay? And in sharing that conflict is when we connect with other people. And so that's what I'm hoping to do for you. I think there's 8 total, what does he call it? Like 8 total, milestones on the framework. And we're going to go through those tonight. So Kendra Hall says, you have the ability to hold the audience in the palm of your hand with the stories inside of you. And I know you guys have heard me say till I'm blue in the face that this business is so much about really influencing people to fall in love with you, to fall in love with your story, to fall in love with your vision, to fall in love with this whole process that you've undergone yourself, right? And we talked at the live event a couple weeks ago about your brand, right? And your brand really does come down to who you are. And how do you convey who you are? By sharing stories. Storytelling is the number one way to really build a brand. Okay, so the first part of this, and feel free, if you guys feel like you're ready to make a post tonight on Facebook, feel free to use this as we go and start writing something out. That's totally fine. Maybe you're going to invite to a challenge group, whatever, just know what your end goal is, okay, before you start. Okay, so the first step in this framework is to define your backstory. So what is your backstory that gives us a vested interest in your journey? So I want to read this to you because it's just better if it comes straight from Russell. He says, most good stories start with a backstory. This means remembering where you were before you had your big aha. Go back to that time and place and remember the circumstances that caused you to start on your journey. Usually the backstory starts at about the same point where your listener is in their life right now. Okay? So where were you before you had your big aha? What did your beginning look like? And here's a key that he didn't include this in his, but just from my own experience, what are the details? I want you to paint the picture of what that life was like for you. Some of you have heard me talk about one time, like 6 years ago, I made a post on my social media about my headache journey. And I included the detail, which was everything was true. I included the detail that I used to carry my migraine prescription, narcotic medication in my pocket all the time. So we had season tickets to the Colts games, and I would go to the Colts games with that pill in my pocket because I could not go anywhere without it. Okay. And to this day, 6 years later, I have people that still reference that story when they talk to me. So what are the details of what your life looked like before you had your big aha moment? Feel free to jot down some notes as we go so that you don't forget after the call. Okay. So step number 2, once we've identified your backstory, we want to find out, what are your desires? What was it that you were looking to accomplish when you decided to change, right? So there's 2 different things. We've heard this before. There is external motivation or extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. Same thing goes for external, internal. External being what drives the journey of accomplishment. So what is the overall struggle that you're dealing with? Maybe it's weight loss, for example. But then there's another side of the story, which is the internal struggle. So what is your journey of transformation when it comes from moving from fear to courage, for example, right? So you might want to lose the weight. That's your external struggle, but your internal struggle is because you feel uncomfortable in your own skin, right? Or maybe it's because you don't even feel confident getting naked in front of your partner, right? Like there's something that's like really bothering you on an internal level. That's your internal transformation. Both of these parts are so crucial because guess what? 99% of Beachbody coaches post about their external transformation. Before and after photo, their abs, all of that kind of stuff, right? But they're missing a key component, which is the internal transformation. So he gives the example of, when you're really thinking about this, if you're struggling with coming up with your internal motivation, he says to ask yourself the question, why, until you get to the root of it. Okay, so here's the example that he gives. He says, keep drilling down until you get to the real reason that you want to change. Here's a hint. It is usually tied to love or status. For example, if someone tells you that they want to lose weight, ask them why. Well, because I want to be healthy. Why? Because I have 3 kids and I want to keep up with them. Why? Because by 5 p.m. I'm completely out of energy and I just want to lay down. Why? Because I don't want people to think I'm a bad mom. Notice that the first few reasons are almost always tied to status, right? What other people think of me. Why? Because I want my kids to know that I love them. Why? Because I never knew whether my mom loved me. Boom. Notice that this one is tied to love. If someone wants to make money, ask why? So I can get a bigger house and my wife can quit her job. Why? So that I can provide a better life for my family. Why? Because my kids are in daycare and I really think they should be home with their mom. Why? Because my definition of a successful family is having my wife stay home with my kids. Why is that important? Because my mom was home when I got home from school And I want that for my kids too. And he just keeps asking the question, why? So I would encourage you, if you are jotting notes down right now, if you think you know your internal motivation, ask yourself why a couple more times, because I have a feeling you could go even deeper than you currently are. Okay, number 3 on the framework is what he calls the wall. So what was the wall that you hit, or the problem within your current opportunity that started you on the new journey? He says, the backstory builds rapport, and then it takes the listener to the moment of frustration that causes the character to start on their journey. That wall is the frustration you felt because of the current opportunity. This old opportunity is not working and is the reason that you were willing to go on a journey to try something new. So what was the wall for you in this particular story? And it's different, right, for every story we have. So what is the wall or the problem? Can you identify that moment when you were extremely frustrated and you made the decision that you were going to change? And once again, I'm going to remind you to paint that picture. Make it detailed. What would you tell your therapist about that moment? Right? Get detailed. Okay, number 4, the epiphany. What was the epiphany that you experienced and the new opportunity that you discovered? So you might be thinking to yourself right now, wow, this is a really detailed way of looking at a story. Yes, but he claims, and I agree, that all 8 components of this is what makes the story sellable. Okay? So what was the epiphany that you experienced and the new opportunity that you discovered? Was it an idea that you had while reading something? Was it a breakthrough? Was it a person who helped you understand something? Somebody that came into your life that you feel like was meant to be because it led you on this new path, right? Like, what was it for you that really was the epiphany that led you to a new opportunity? Number 5 is the plan. This one kind of threw me for a loop because I was expecting us to go from the epiphany to like the transformation, right? But he actually includes a couple more steps along the way. Number 5 is the plan. What was the plan that you created to achieve your desire? Now that you've had the epiphany and you've learned about the new opportunity, now we talk about the plan you've created to see if this new opportunity will lead you to what you desire most. What is the plan? And then what are the steps you took to get to your goals? Inside the plan, you are inevitably going to run into conflict, which is where we start to get into the emotion from the story. Remember, it isn't the desire of the character that causes the emotion. It comes from the conflict they experience while they're trying to reach the goal. So when I see that as meaning we don't need to go into a whole lot of detail about why we desired the change, but we do need to incorporate more detail and more emotion in our story when it comes to the conflict and the plan. All right, number 6, the conflict. What conflict did you experience along the way? So most likely after you developed a plan, you ran into some sort of conflict. It wasn't as easy, right, as you once thought. At this point in your story, you had to make a decision whether you were going to go back to your old life or you were going to keep moving forward. That moment is what we call the conflict. He says, in spite of all the reasons that you may have said no in the past, this time was different. This is when the desire shifts from should to must. Instead of I should lose weight, it changed to I must lose weight. Or instead of I should start a business, it changed to I must start a business. This will sound like a battle cry to your prospects because they too have been shoulding for too long. It's time to finally make the change once and for all. They see you as someone who successfully took a stand and shifted from should to must, and you will inspire them to do the same. In all good stories, after the hero has moved past the point of no return, things start to fall apart. They discover the journey isn't as easy as they thought it would be. Describe the major setback that you experienced that made you feel like all was lost. So in other words, we want to kick up the emotion level here at this point in the story. Am I making sense so far? Is this helpful? Good. Number 7 is the achievement. Of course, what was your end result? So something happened, right? You made a push and something happened. Either you got results or you didn't. Either your external, whatever that external desire was, hang on one second. Whatever that external desire was, right? Maybe it was to lose weight. It either happened or it didn't. Right? So that's just, it's very simple. That's the achievement. And then lastly, I didn't put a number on it, but number 8 is the transformation. What was the transformation that you experienced? Here is where you talk about who you became through the process. He says, this is the death of your internal struggles and the death of your identity and rebirth of your new belief systems. And then what I think is probably the clutch statement of the whole book is that the goal of all good stories is to break old belief patterns and rebuild them with new ones. So I don't know if you can tell that I bolded that or not, but I literally have starred that part of the book and I've underlined it. And to me, it's like the cornerstone of the book, because that's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to get people on board in our challenge groups, or we're trying to get people on board on our team. And the reason why is because we have this new belief system and what it is that we're doing and in the journey that we've gone through that we wish on everybody, right? But the problem is that everybody else has our old belief systems. The people that we're trying to sell this to have our old belief systems. And I think that too often the stories that we choose to tell on social media only represent the external struggle, or we don't do a good enough job of connecting ourselves to who we were before the conflict, of what our life looked like before. Because what we want people to do is we want them to read our story and think, oh my gosh, she's describing me. But when we show our food plates and our workouts and stuff like that on our stories consistently and continuously, it sometimes is not indicating to those people that they can undergo this transformation too. And if you remember back to another team call that we had, we talked about the story brand, building a story brand framework. And he talks about how the customer is the hero of your story and you're the guide. And ultimately, I think that's the same thing Russell's trying to say here. If we really want to connect somebody and send them down the path that we've gone down, ultimately for that transformation, we have to connect with them where they are. We have to meet them where they are. And we have to just start to break down those old belief patterns. So I did a little bit of brainstorming. It took me about 3 seconds to write these down, but I'm sure there's about 500 different topics we could write down. But I asked myself, in this business, what is it that we need to make people believe? And to me, those are the perfect writing prompts for some social media stories. What do we need to make people believe? We have a new belief system, but they have an old belief system. So for me, it was easy to write these down, right? They must address their nutrition. We've all learned this, right? We've all learned this, but they haven't yet. They must address their nutrition. They must move. They likely will require support and accountability. They can't do it on their own. We do believe they can be a successful home-based business owner, right? There's a million different things. These were just the ones that I put on the slide. But I encourage you to make a list of what those things could be. What are the things that we need to make people believe? Make a list of those things, and then you go every day on your social media, you go and you say, okay, I'm going to the top of my list. There's this one. I have a story about that. Let me tell my story about how I had to learn the hard way about addressing my nutrition, right? Or let me write a story about how I required support and accountability. But you're going through these 8 pieces of the framework and telling your story. So as usual, I like to make recommendations for you guys on the subject. My favorite, honestly, is probably Bo Eason's website. I heard him speak several years ago at a Platinum Edge event that Christine Dwyer put on. And I bought into his online course at the time that was called The Power of Story. But I just looked him up today to see if he still offers that or what he's got going on. And he actually now has a free storytelling guide on his website, which is called boeason.com. And I think I mentioned to you guys before that his new book, which is There Is No Plan B for Your A Game. I highly encourage you listening to that book on Audible because he is a brilliant storyteller. The details that he includes, actually, while I was writing this PowerPoint, I kept thinking about some of the stories that he shared in that book that I listened to on Audible and how they really truly did have all of these different components in them. Stories That Stick by Kendra Hall, that's a recently published book. She's got some gems in that book. And then Building a Story Brand with Donald Miller, that's something we've talked about before. He has a podcast that's free, but he also has a book called Building a Story Brand as well. All right, cool. So do you guys find that helpful when it comes to writing out posts, writing out your stories? So for me, I would use those 8 things as like a checklist. Write your post, follow those as a framework, and then at the very end, make sure you go back and say, did I have this? Did I have this? Did I have this? Did I have this? And his best tip is to include the emotion, most of the emotion, at that conflict point of your story.
So when we're utilizing these, we're supposed to use all 8 of those in one story?
Yeah. So I can actually read you his example if you'd like, since I have the book right here.
Yeah, it just seems like it'd be a very, very long post to share with somebody with that, like on Facebook. And you right.
No, I would tell you from my experience, it's not too long. Like sometimes the longest posts that I write, the longest stories that I give are the ones that get the most traction and the most reach out.
Okay. So
yeah, Abby, I'm going to have the recording and I can post the PowerPoint as well. Okay, let me see if I can find I hate when authors use something techie as their example because it's like, really? But the example that he gives is, okay. So he said, he owns an online system called ClickFunnels, which is basically like a sales funnel system. So that's the example that he's giving. But his statement that he made up front, like, so what he's trying to sell people on, right? For us, it's a challenge group or a coach opportunity. He says his is, if I can make people believe that funnels are the key to online business success and that they're only attainable through ClickFunnels, then all other objections and concerns become irrelevant and they have to give me money. Okay, so you could use that. I mean, it's the same thing as us saying, like, we believe that fitness, nutrition, and support are the keys to health and fitness success, and they're only attainable through Team Beachbody, through what we offer. If we make them believe that they need what we have, then all other objections will go away. It's the same thing, right? So he says, here's his example of going through those 8 things. The first thing is the backstory. It says, what is your backstory that gives us a vested interest in your journey? He says, I was a broke college student athlete trying to make money online. I learned that people were making money selling information products, so I created a DVD teaching people how to make potato guns, and I started to sell it. I was using the extra money that I had from our potato gun sales to keep wrestling so that I wouldn't have to drop out of school. That's his backstory. Number 2, what is it you want to accomplish? He said, I wanted to be able to support my wife so she wouldn't have to work and we could eventually start our family. His external struggle is that he was only making a few dollars a day, and many days he actually lost money, so he wasn't able to make enough money to support her. And the internal struggle is that his wife was supporting him. He said, I felt like I needed to be the man in the relationship, but my wife was working 2 jobs while I was going to school. I felt like a failure as a husband. So that's his internal struggle. Number 3, what was the wall that he hit? The problem was that Google had changed their algorithms and increased their ad costs. Suddenly, my little potato gun website was no longer making money, so I had to turn it off, which literally killed my only source of income. His epiphany: I met a friend who told me about how he was adding upsells to his products. By doing that, he was able to make more money from every customer who came in, and therefore all of his websites started working again in spite of Google's issues. I learned that normal websites weren't enough anymore to make money online. You needed an actual sales funnel. So I found someone who was selling potato gun kits, and I partnered with them and started selling them as an upsell. After I added a potato gun kit as an upsell for the DVD, I started to make money again. That's when I realized that the secret to making money online was creating sales funnels. He's validating his story. Number 5, what was the plan that you created? He said his plan was to start creating sales funnels. He started creating them and selling products in the weight loss market, but they couldn't stop there. They started doing them in other genres as well. What conflict did he experience? He said each new funnel that we created took 6 to 8 weeks to create. So he's explaining to the customer, like, this was not easy, right? Like, this was not something that we did overnight. We had a team of 8 full-time people. We had to glue together 13 different products. On average, our costs were $30,000 per funnel, and only 1 out of 10 would actually recoup the money. So he's explaining his risk in doing this business. That's his conflict. What was the end result? So I like that, though, because let's just pause. So I like that his conflict was that, because what does that tell the customer? Like, the potential customer for ClickFunnels is thinking, I need this tool, right? I need this tool because this is how much he's invested. This is how much risk he's taken to ensure that this is going to be a successful platform. Number 7, what was his end result? He ended up getting so frustrated that they decided to create a platform that would make it easy for us to create sales funnels, and that's how ClickFunnels was born. We thought if we could build something that would make it possible to build in a day what would normally take us 6 to 8 weeks, we'd be really happy. After 8 months of programming, we made ClickFunnels. I can now build in an hour without any tech people what used to take me and 8 guys 6 to 8 weeks. What was the transformation? He says, after creating ClickFunnels, I was not only able to let my wife become a full-time mom, I've also been able to spend a lot less time working because we can create things so quickly. I'm paraphrasing, but so he like wrote out those things to craft his story, right? And I think it's important for us to do that too. And then decide, like, some of it probably could have been whittled out, right? Doesn't have to be that wordy, but I think every single component needs to be there. This is who I am. This is my backstory. I struggled with migraine my whole life, right? From the time I started my period, basically, like, is what I tell most people, right? I start my story. I tell them where I was before. From there, I go into all of the different components. So for me, it would be, let's see. I gotta find my thing. What did I want to accomplish? I wanted ultimately to be pain-free, but for me, I wanted a distraction from the pain. My external struggle that I was dealing with, migraine, weight gain, all kinds of health issues. The internal struggle, gosh, we could go super deep on that, right? Like feeling insecure in my own skin, feeling like I was going to live my life miserable. I was ultimately depressed because I didn't have a day without pain. I don't know. I'd have to really dig deep to figure out what that is. What was the wall or problem that I hit? Well, gosh, this is where you could have 50 stories. Insurance didn't cover my prescriptions. I don't know, like I paid $350 for prescription. Like, there's so many different things that came up in my journey that I could outline as different walls that I hit. The epiphany that I experienced was I probably couldn't control the pain, but I could control my mindset and I could control my distraction and whether or not I was focused on something else. And so for me, that distraction became P90X. It became the programs that ultimately gave me a distraction from the pain. The plan that I created, right, was join a challenge group, start drinking a shake, start hopping into accountability groups, start pressing play on my program. The conflicts that I experienced along the way, gosh, again, I could pick from a multitude, right? For me, I didn't see any weight loss results my first 2 rounds of P90X until I addressed my nutrition. So let's just say that's the conflict that I choose. What was the end result that I achieved? After I addressed my nutrition and I did P90X for a 3rd time, I lost 21 pounds after just that round. That was my external results, but my internal results, which is my ultimate transformation, was that I started to feel better about myself, right? And it answers that intrinsic thing that we talked about earlier. I started to feel better about myself. I started to feel more confident. I started to feel better all around, have a more positive mindset. So, I mean, yes, I think that you have to ask yourself all 8 of these questions as you're writing the story. How much detail you decide to include is up to you. I like to include a lot of detail, but I like to include that detail in a way that connects with the potential customer, meeting them where they are right now. And like I said before, his advice is to put most of your emotion into the conflict itself, as opposed to your desire. Is that helpful? Or does that answer you, Sarah? Okay. So do you see what I mean when I say, like, so I was reading this the other night, and the first thought I had was, I should lead a team call on this. And then I was like, how crazy is that? That 1, 2, 3, 4 pages, it's only 4 pages in this book, is such valuable information that I can turn it into a team call, teach the team about it. And yet there are people out there that are not willing to invest in personal development. It's like 4 pages of this one book, right? We're not even through January yet. So I'm going to probably read a ton of books this year, but 4 pages of this book just made a huge difference. That was the first thought that I had. The second thought that I had was, every coach needs to hear this, because like I said before, I'm guilty of it, right? I'm guilty of posting something that I don't even really explain the conflict that I had. I just go from my backstory to my transformation, right? Sometimes I skip the conflict altogether. Sometimes I talk about the conflict and the transformation, but I leave out the backstory and who I was before this. So I think that every single component of this is important. He talks about using this storytelling technique in your email marketing. That's his dominant focus, is on email marketing. But I think for those of us that obviously we run social media businesses, I think we can use the same framework for our posts there too. Okay. Does anybody have any questions or anything, or? I think you could probably come up with a lot of different stories for yourself. And I should also mention that it doesn't always have to be about you, right? It could be about a challenger, and you could tell their story from your perspective. Or it could be about a coach on your team and you sharing their story from your perspective. It could be a story about your parents, right? Your mom. And how you grew up with a mom that had no self-control when it came to eating, or whatever the case is. Like, it could be a story about someone else in your life. It doesn't have to always be about you, but as long as it fulfills those components, right? Again, to kind of circle back, the 3 foundational elements of every good story has a character, the character has a desire, and the character undergoes a conflict for ultimate transformation. Jackie's like, yeah, English teacher. Cool. You guys are quiet.
I love it all. I'm just trying to figure out how to make things happen time-wise.
Yeah.
It's good. I've been listening to a lot of, it seems like everything I've been listening to podcast-wise too has just been all about, you have to tell the storytelling, like you have to get at the problem. And it's so true. Like you said, we're all offering solution, but not talking about that problem. So I'm hearing it everywhere. And now I'm trying to time block my week, and I'm like, well, shucks. Saturday,
right.
Derek and I had a big sit down about, like, we both need to start sleeping more than 4 hours a night. So I have to stop burning the candle until midnight. So trying to figure that out, but yes, I love it all. I work really well within a framework too. So
Yeah.
English teacher loves a good outline. I will be putting together an outline I can share. It's on my list.
Well, and I think too, like that, I liked the concept of the prompts, like writing out prompts for yourself so that you're like, okay, today this is what I'm posting.
That's what will be in my outline. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I don't know how you guys only sleep 4 hours. Woo! If I get
By
like
Thursday, it catches up, and then I do too much caffeine, and then my gut gets wonky again, and
yeah,
and we stayed up too late last night because we finally got a night out, and we're like, all right, we're gonna sleep in on Sunday because when we sleep in, the kids sleep in. And 5 o'clock, Holly came roaring into my room. It's time to get up.
oh no.
And then she woke her brother up screaming at me. So it's been a long day, but it's all good.
I get it. No, when I tell Chris all the time, like he gets up before school to work out. His alarm goes off at like, I don't know, 10 till 5 or something. And he's a guy, so he doesn't have to worry about like the hair fixing and all that. But
Dry shampoo. I don't wash my hair.
I mean, he takes like a 5-minute shower. But sometimes he doesn't go to bed till like midnight, so he gets just under 5 hours of sleep or whatever. And I'm like, there's no way I would make it. Like I literally feel like I'm gonna puke. Like, I mean, I feel jet lagged. Like I'm such a dramatic person when it comes to no sleep. Just ask him when we had a newborn. I was like, you need to get her. I can't do it.
I'm just legitimately starting to worry about like the brain damage and all the stuff Shalene like went through and talks about. And it's like that lack of sleep, like,
yep.
You know, and trying to find time in the day. How do I get Holly to go to bed earlier?
I don't know. Lock the door.
I would literally have to lock her in.
Yeah.
She still naps like 2 to 3 hours in the afternoon though. And when she doesn't, she's a freaking nightmare. But when she does, she's awake later. So
yeah. Yep.
I don't know.
I think Ellery's in the process of dropping nap entirely. So
she does a couple days a week just because she's at school till 3. But
yeah.
That's where I keep getting totally messed up now because Sawyer doesn't nap at all anymore. So my time to work was when he napped because it's like focus time. And now I have to figure out while he's at school, which is usually when I was like trying to run those errands that you tell me when I take a kid on, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Trying to figure it all out. And then like Jackie, like trying to figure out sleep. And then every time I keep listening to all the things, right?
He's really tired.
I should do that. I need to do that. I need to do that. And like my to-do list keeps getting longer. I'm like able to check off 1 or 2 things. I'm just like, okay, trying to figure it all out. And then when it comes to like my story, like I don't ever know like my story with my like drug and alcohol, my stuff that's not so good to talk about with the kid on the thing, was so like long ago now. Like it's so hard for me to share, like remember specifics of where I was at, to share it in a way that's like an epiphany, I guess. Or when I do share it, it gets so long-winded sharing the feelings of it. I'm like, well, there's half the world is already tuned out and just liking my picture now. So I just have to sit down.
I can assure you that you might think they're tuning out, but they most likely aren't. But if you want to send me the whole thing, like the 17-page thing that you got, and I'll help you whittle it down to a good story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody, I'll offer that to anybody. If you guys need help crafting a story, like feel free to draft it up first and then send it over to me and I can look at it and help you, take some stuff out. But I know that for me, sometimes what I like to do is I'll start my post, I'll write it out, and then I scroll back up to the top and I read it through again. And when I read it through again, I say to myself, like, okay, what information and details does the person need to have? And what do I need to leave out? And then when you go through it that second time, sometimes you're like, I don't really need to tell them that part or, whatever. And you can kind of clean it up that way. But I think it was Charlie that mentioned at our live event, right? He's the one that recommended this book to me in the summertime. and it's the same thing goes for what Russell says, is you want to make sure that when you're talking, whether it's through an email blast or on your social, that you're talking like you would tell a friend. So I think when we see this kind of framework, it's easy to say, okay, like, how am I going to sell somebody on a challenge group? I'm going to follow this framework. But at the same time, it's like, well, let's just change that a little bit. And let's pretend that you're just writing, a story to your friend, like to your best friend, to tell them about something that happened to you or whatever this conflict is that you're wanting to describe to them. If you're sitting down with a glass of wine with a friend and you're telling them this story, what would you say? And write like you talk, just like Charlie said. Write like you talk. Like don't try to sound like John Grisham or something when you're writing your story. So keep it casual. And like I said before, you have a drug and alcohol story, maybe, for example, but you might also have there might be other stories too, right? Think about, for me, I think about like, what insecurities have I had? What fears have I had that I've overcome? So it's easy because I know for me too, like I can easily tell the headache story because it's the one I've told the most, but there are other components of me that could be shared too. But yeah, I'm happy to help you guys with that. And when I was thinking about this today, I was even thinking about how creative we could get with this on our stories, pun intended. So on our Facebook and Instagram stories, right? Like, could we have our first clip be like a photo of us before, right? Our backstory. Like, could we follow the same framework in 8 different frames of a story on Instagram or Facebook? Could we have our backstory? Could we have a picture showing each step of the way for us to help tell that story? That's something else to think about. Cool. So the last thing that I will say is that I have a family member who is nearing the end of his life. We will most likely be traveling to Louisville, Kentucky for a couple days later this week. So if I can let the leaders of the group know when that happens, if I'm unavailable, but we are most likely going to be out of town for a couple days. And I don't know when that will happen or how that will align with the Super Bowl group. So just if everybody could just commit to sharing a recipe and posting in there and creating some energy in the group, that would be super, so that I don't feel like, holy crap, it's Saturday before Super Bowl and nothing's happened. Let's just make that like a team-wide effort. That'd be super. Awesome. Okay, you guys. Well, thanks for tuning in. I'll post the recording tomorrow with the weekly announcements. I will also make a Team Cup post really shortly after this call. If you have any questions for me, let me know. Have a good night.